Okay, this is a short story I wrote called The Third Date. Stefan began to despair, not because of his curse. He had accepted that a millennium ago. Some would think that being a vampire was his curse, but in actuality, it was the fact that he was a vampire with a conscience. He had long ago stopped preying upon human beings and switched to using large animals, deer, cows, horses, to slake his thirst, even those he never intentionally killed. When his craving for the real thing became too intense, he would park his Camry in the garage and get behind the wheel of his other vehicle, an old bookmobile van. He would then drive to one of the many poor areas of the big city. Just before arriving at the chosen site, he would stop, get out, and cover the book part of the name with a magnetic sign that said blood, and then drive on. Stefan used sterilized equipment, and the indigent people who came to donate were none the wiser. He assuaged his conscience about deceiving them by paying them twice what any other plasma center or blood bank would. But vampire does not live by blood alone. Stefan needed blood, but what he truly craved was love. The cause of his despair was that he hadn't found love even after many, many years of searching. The few female vampires he'd come across were wholly unsuitable. The majority were man-haters. Understandable, considering that most of them had been turned into vampires by men. The remaining ones were like succubi. They enjoyed preying upon innocent victims. Their personalities could not have been more different from Stefan's. As a result, he had long ago given up trying to find love with a female vampire. Unfortunately, he could not find any mortal women who wanted to be with him. The majority of them fled as soon as he told them that he had a rare blood disorder, even those who did not want to have children. The ladies who made it past that disclosure never made it past the third date, which was when Stefan revealed the true nature of his condition. Although vampires were currently being romanticized in pop culture, Stefan found that no woman actually wanted to settle down with one. Either they were the conservative, Republican types who believed that the institution of marriage should only be between the living and the living, or they were the bleeding heart liberals. Stefan preferred these. The bleeding heart liberal types who were too saddened by the thought of growing old, dying, and leaving him to grieve for the rest of his immortality. Stefan decided to relieve his plight by going to the library and reading the latest issue of his favorite magazine, Goth Quarterly. Although not a goth, he preferred bright clothes and disliked piercings and tats. He found it to be the subculture with the greatest number of women who kept the same hours as he, up all night and asleep most of the day. Stefan's decision to read the magazine turned out to be fortuitous. He found an ad for a special dating service buried in the very back of the issue. The service, Grave Expectations, we take dating seriously because you do, had a very steep fee, $333 per 2 weeks. It claimed that 2/3 of new members found a match within that time, and the remaining 1/3 did so within 2 more weeks. The service was so confident that each subscriber would find a match within 1 month that it offered a money-back guarantee. Stefan jotted down the website and hurried home. Once there, he logged onto his computer and navigated to the site. He didn't hesitate to use his credit card to pay the fee. Grave Expectations boasted of the finest encryption in the industry. He spent quite some time filling out his personal profile, making it as true a description of himself as possible. After reading the finished product, Stefan realized that he was even more of a metrosexual than the majority of male vampires. He partially regretted this, because he had also found that most women, despite claiming that they wanted cultured, emotionally communicative men, actually desired the manly blue-collar types. The female mind was a mystery even to him. Clearly, immortality did not confer omniscience. But Stefan could only be himself. He'd have to trust that Grave Expectations would deliver on its promise to find a match for him. Finally, he made sure to post a recent photo of himself. A person does not age from the day he or she becomes a vampire. Although Stefan was over 1,000 years old, to say he didn't look a day over 40 was the literal truth. Several days, then a week passed without any match. 1 day shy of the 2-week period, he logged on to find that he did, indeed, have a match. Excitedly, Stefan signed onto the website and viewed the profile and the photo of the woman who'd matched with him. Her name was Anastasia, but she went by Stacy. Her skin was more tan than he liked. He himself was quite pale. Vampires, by their very nature, are heliophobes. But Stefan would not let one physical flaw be a deal breaker. He knew from centuries of experience that only fools held out for perfection. She was otherwise very attractive and had both raven black hair and green eyes, Stefan's favorite features on a woman. Also, there was something in her profile that stood out even more than her beauty did. Blood donation was the first entry she'd listed under hobbies. Stefan clicked on the box. Stefan clicked on the box that allowed him to send her a message. It turned out that, like Stefan, Stacy was not a fan of emailing a prospective date ad infinitum. Call it internet dating fatigue, but both of them were ready to find a long-term partner. Meeting and finding out if the ever-elusive chemistry was present had to be done ASAP. That way, if it wasn't there, neither person would go on to expend a lot of emotional and physical resources. So, 2 sets of emails and 1 phone call later, Stacy agreed to meet him at his favorite initial meeting place, the Coffee Inn, the only 24-hour coffee shop in town. On the agreed-upon day, he arrived there 10 minutes early, but was pleasantly surprised to see Stacy already sitting there. Despite being even tanner than her picture, she was also more beautiful than that image conveyed. After some small talk, Stefan decided to cut to the chase. So, what was it about my profile that intrigued you? You mean, other than your devilish good looks and articulate written responses, she replied, smilingly and without missing a beat. Stefan found himself blushing, a real feat for his kind, and grinning. Yes. Well, to be honest, the biggest thing was that you mentioned you are a phlebotomist. At this, Stefan's eyebrows rose up, accentuating their natural inverted V. Stacy smiled and thought, he looks like a hot version of the Count from Sesame Street. What about that? Well, I don't usually reveal this on the first date, but I have a blood disorder, Stefan. After that, even the sound of his heart hammering in his chest was not loud enough to drown out the voice in his head screaming, "She could be the one!" He made a conscious effort to slow his breathing and then asked, "What sort of blood disorder?" "It's called hemochromatosis. Ever heard of it?" "No. What is it, Stacy?" "Excessive iron absorption in the digestive system, which leads to severe iron buildup in the body. Bronzing of the skin is the least severe complication." Looking him in the eye, she said, "But hey, at least I save a bundle on tanning." They shared a laugh, and Stefan was charmed by the lilting quality of her laughter. Then, with a more serious mien, she continued, "More severe complications include cirrhosis of the liver and diabetes. Is there any cure?" After a brief pause, she replied, "No." At this, Stefan could not quite hide a frown from his face. Seeing it, Stacy hastened to add, "But I've been spared any serious symptoms, because I've been religious about having my blood drawn once or twice a week, which is the only real treatment. Now do you understand why I like the fact that you're a phlebotomist?" "Yes, I do." After a long pause, she said, "It wasn't discovered that I had the disease until after I became an adult, so even with the treatment, my life expectancy may be below average. I ordinarily don't tell people that until the 3rd date, but you seem like a really great guy, and I feel I owe it to both of us to tell you now." "What? Why are you smiling, Stefan?" "Anastasia, what would you say if I told you that not only would I love to drink or draw your blood twice a week, but also that I knew of a way to prolong your life as much as you would like?" Now it was Stacy's turn to smile, and hers totally eclipsed his. "If you are serious, I'd say I found Mr. Right." "Great, now let me tell you about my blood disorder." The end. So,